For those of you who are not up on the ACC's decision over the past couple months to go to a 3-5-5 schedule, it means there's going to be 3 primary opponents designated to each program in the conference that will be an opponent that they play each and every season. And then the rest of the conference, meaning 10 other teams, will be split into 5 and 5. That way you alternate those 2 5-team groups. Therefore, you play everyone at least once every other year. I think that's pretty phenomenal planning myself. There's other aspects of it that I commented on. You can check out the video on the main channel. So let's go to the Miami aspect of this, and I'll pull up a full screen that will run it down. But Miami's primary opponents, Cam, of course, Florida State, Boston College, and Louisville.
You know, Florida State, obviously, that's your traditional rival. So that's going to be one. Boston College, that goes back to the Big East days and things. Goes back to, way back with, the Flutie, Hail Mary and things like that. So historical in that kind of a way. And then Louisville has no real rivals. No traditional guy. There's Kentucky, but that's it in the SEC. So in conference, that was the wild card team that had to be placed somewhere, right? So as you see that, yeah. So Florida State, it really was Florida State number 1 for us, right? So Florida State's number 1, Boston College is number 2 because of history. And then they had to throw Louisville somewhere. And so what I believe is they basically took Virginia or Virginia Tech off, probably Virginia Tech more. They took Virginia Tech off of our 3 and then replaced them with Louisville. And then they just kind of had to wedge Louisville in a couple places. And that happens to be where that is. I'm fine with it. Boston College, that should be a 9 out of 10 years win. Florida State, I know it's a rivalry game, so it's going to be less dominated by one team than it should be. But the current state of the programs, that should be a 8 out of 10, and then Louisville should be, probably a 7 out of 10 win rate of those teams at a minimum, I think. So, you could have had stiffer competition, but, it could have gotten, it could have been much easier too. It could have been, Duke. But, Duke is going to have Carolina, Carolina State, and Wake Forest is their 3. Like, duh, of course. So, yeah, but it was, that's a fine group. I don't like it. I understand it in terms of Miami. RIP Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and then Syracuse. And then they got to play Florida every year as well. So every year for the next 5 years, they got Florida, Miami, and Clemson set every single season. Rip.
Yeah.
Like that's really rough for them. And especially at the state of where their program is. Again, this is not Bobby Bowden top 5 every year for 20 years, Florida State. It's just not. So that's a little rough for them. In terms of, I could run down all of the teams, but I'm not going to. Georgia Tech, their traditional rival is Clemson. They have that one every year as a crossover anyway. Wake Forest. Georgia Tech, they kind of threw, again, other teams. Oh, Louisville, fine. Wake Forest, they needed a 3rd team, so it's a wild card. So, again, I think that's where Louisville has been inserted in where another team could have gone for Georgia Tech. In terms of Miami, for the other 5, I went down to the schedules because in the linked tweets in the rest of the thread, they have the season schedules for the next 4 years. That'd be 23, 24, 25, and 26. Group A for Miami of the other 5 is Georgia Tech, Virginia, Clemson, NC State, and Carolina. So those will be the 5. But then also Group B is Duke, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh. That is a much easier path to traverse. But because it's not a fully set 5, it's not formulaic in that kind of a way, what they've actually done is in a couple of years, they've swapped Clemson and Virginia Tech in those groups or in and out of those groups.
Okay.
So it's like 2 years, it's Clemson. It's like years 1 and 2, but not 3 and 4. but most other teams are like year 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. You know what I mean? So it's like when they use them has been moved around slightly, and that's been at least from what I was looking at the other day when I was on the phone with a friend of mine. That's what it seems to be. So those, I mean, obviously the group with Clemson is the more challenging group just because Clemson, and I don't think that Clemson's going to be superstar national championship Clemson, but they're still a quality team. I think there's still going to be a quality program, even if the quality goes from 13 wins to 9 wins or 8 wins. That's still a quality program in my mind. So yeah, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Clemson, NC State, and Carolina, or Clemson or Virginia Tech, and then Duke, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Clemson or Virginia Tech, but more likely Virginia Tech and Pittsburgh in the other 5. Yeah, the B-year rotations in 24 and 26, definitely an easier path forward. But in 2024, that's one of the years that they switched Clemson. So we're going to be playing them again and again and again. So that year, Miami is at Florida to open, at Clemson, and at Notre Dame, all in 2024, 2 years' time. That is a very tough schedule. But, you know, we can't be scared of anybody. We can go in anywhere, play anywhere, anybody, anytime. But that's going to put this program and this staff and this team to the test for sure, because, yeah, those are 3 major name brand programs. Like it or hate it, you know, obviously I have no love lost for the University of Florida, but yeah, going up there and going to South Bend and going to Clemson, South Carolina all in the same year, that's a tough task, but one that hopefully the Miami Hurricanes are for.
So my thoughts on this is I scurry to try to find some stats I compiled. I'll get to them in just a second. Would be number one, I think that the ACC nailed this about as close as you can, because everybody needs to understand when you put a formula out there, not everybody fits the formula perfectly, meaning there are some programs that have one realistic rival. Others have 2 and 3 and 4 that are true rivals. So a formula is not going to fit and adapt to every program. So there's going to be what Cam alluded to, kind of a cascade of priorities. The first one is you have to protect Florida State. Miami, Florida State. You have to protect North Carolina, NC State, etc. And then you've got preferences like Tobacco Road. You want to make as much of a preference of keeping those collective teams together as much as you possibly can. And then it becomes placeholders. Okay, we've got like 14 spots open. What's going to make sense? What's not going to make it too difficult on anyone? And then it becomes placeholders. So Miami, there was an obvious must. That's probably the most important must in the conference. And then after that, those 2 are kind of placeholders because there are other more preferable opponents that make more sense for both Miami and those other teams. And I think Virginia Tech would be near the top of that list.
Yeah, that's that one, you know, and you get, I know people were talking about markets. So it is easier to get from Miami to Boston than it is to get to Blacksburg, Virginia, with the plane and, you know, plane trip and a ride, similarly to Louisville. I get it, but yeah, in terms of the football and the tradition and the history between the programs, that's the glaring omission in my mind, is not having Miami and Virginia Tech every single year. That one sticks out to me.
Now, sometimes,
and I mean, look, exactly. You got Virginia Tech, Virginia. Then you bring over a Big East / Coastal Division rival in Pittsburgh, and you know, spin a dice, a 12-sided Dungeons and Dragons die or something, and you come up with Wake Forest as their 3rd team. You know, so there's 2 very intentional ones. In-state Commonwealth Cup, gotta have it. Pittsburgh completely makes sense and is geographically reasonable. And then you're just going to throw Wake Forest. And I get that there's not going to be any geographic reasonability, for Miami other than Florida State, just because South Florida is so far south. If you've never driven the state of Florida, you hit the Georgia-Florida line and you got another 7 hours to get to Miami, you know, or like 400 miles, something like that. So it is way further south than you think. And yeah, like to get anywhere is going to take a while. So there isn't a Tobacco Road, you know, like those middle 2 lines underneath Miami. Carolina and Carolina State, or NC State, sorry. So Carolina gets Duke, NC State, and Virginia. Cool. NC State gets the Textile Bowl with Clemson, the agricultural school of the state of South Carolina, and then the other two teams in Tobacco Road, Duke and Carolina. Like, they all make sense, both, in terms of history and in terms of geography. In terms of Miami, there can be a lean on history, and I think that they went there with Boston College, and they had to go a ways back to find that history. But then, it was they used a number randomizer to find Louisville as the number 3. But in terms of this is for the next 4 years, so not this upcoming year. The schedule's already been set for 22, but this is the next 4 years following that, 23 through 26. There will be a reevaluation in 2025 that will set then the schedules for 27 through 30. So it is potentially possible that things will change and realign, because again, the conference want to keep traditional things together, but also balance maybe some of the teams that opponents the teams are playing, and also set themselves up for the best path forward towards a college football playoff and a major payoff day for the conference. So, Georgia Tech, again, traditional rival Clemson, Louisville, Wake Forest, fine. Florida State, Miami, number 1, Clemson, who's in their division now, number 2, and then Syracuse, fine. Carolina gets the other team. Oh, sorry, Duke gets the other teams in the state of North Carolina, which are Carolina, NC State, and Wake Forest. Again, it's really clear for at least 1, probably 2 of the 3 teams. It's very infrequent that it's the Duke situation where it's just like, oh yeah, all the other teams in the state of North Carolina, situation. But
and that's exactly what I was just about to point out. Ironically, Duke, being probably the worst football program in the conference, has the most continuity to its 3 primary opponents. They make the most sense of any of the teams in the conference. North Carolina, NC State, and Wake. They're all rivals of Duke. And then second would be NC State, with Duke. Clemson has become a rival, is a rival. North Carolina, of course. And the one that makes the least sense to me would be Wake. They're a rival against Duke. Then Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech are just kind of placeholders. But that's what it's going to be. You can't get it perfect. You just don't have the right math to do it.
Right.
The other thing that stands out to me, Cam, is when I just glanced at it and looked at each team's 3 primary opponents, I immediately thought Florida State's got the toughest draw and Wake has the easiest draw. And then I went to the last 5 years. I went through the last 5 years ACC records. Do you know who has the second best record in the ACC over the last 5 years? Clemson, of course.
NC State.
Record. Miami.
No,
Miami,
really?
best conference record in the ACC, 27-14, the last 5 seasons. So that's 2017. Of course, that was a 7-1 season through 21. So in order, Florida State, 78-47 are those 5 opponents, those 3 opponents the last 5 seasons put together. Of course, anybody that draws Clemson, again, as you mentioned, it's going to be a bit of a rough ride, but shouldn't be as dominant as they've been. But the numbers tell us, and anybody can check out my video, that Florida State is the toughest draw. And yes, let's see if I can take it from the top here. If I choose this screen, hang with me for just a second. We have this one. Those are the 4 toughest records in the ACC. Those are the 4 most difficult 3 primary opponents based on the last 5 seasons in the ACC.
And I mean, off the top of the dome, what do Florida State and Georgia Tech have in common?
They're no good.
Nope. About the common opponents.
Oh, they're
both of them got to play Clemson.
Oh, they both got to play. Yeah, exactly. They both have to play Clemson.
So, there it goes. But And yeah, that's why, I mean, if you see 78 and 47 and then 74 and 50, 51 or whatever it was, it's really outsized because, Clemson's in those groups for, both of those teams. But, it'll be interesting. And, I think that obviously I'm sorry, I was taking notes. I like to write on paper still sometimes. So yeah, just looking at the groups, it's not anything that should really be too tough to traverse for Miami. Not saying that every year is going to be undefeated national championship season and things like that and blah 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 blah. But they're advantageous situations. So